Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers, and this is Andy 255, where we're going to be working with nHair. And so we're going to create a head of hair eventually at the very end on a mannequin that we used before in our drape. So you might want to grab him and go ahead and import him into this scene, or I will have a couple files you can download. So look for those. So I'm going to go to File, Open Scene, and I'll have a file called Ball UV Map Start 01 Head Start nHair Cap. So those are the two files I want you to download. So I'll have those up for you guys. Download those and unzip them and put them in the Scenes folder. So make a new folder called Andy 255 Module 12 Hair, and put these two in the scene folder. Okay, so Ball UV Map Start 01 and Head Start nHair 01 Hair Cap. So we're going to start with the first one, the ball. Go ahead and open that up. Let's take you through why this is important. This sphere is special than just grabbing a sphere. It's because this one is specially UV mapped for you. So if I go into UVs, UV editor, and I turn this off, you can see that this is especially mapped out for you. Okay, so you can see that we have the UV maps looking pretty good, top and bottom. So we'll turn that off. That's why I want you to use this, so you will have desirable results. Okay, so with that done, I'm pretty sure I deleted by type history, but let's go ahead and center pivot on that. Delete by type history and phrase transformations, just to make sure everything's good to go. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So make sure you select the object that you want to use, or you can go in here and click on the faces that you would like the hair to come out of. So you can do one or the other. You can select the whole thing and it will give you different results. So let's start with the whole thing first and give you an idea what it looks like. So let's go to nHair now. Let's go into Hotbox Controls and go to FX only. Okay. Alright, so let's go to nHair and go create hair into the option box. Let's talk about all the options we have for this. Okay. So you have the option to just use paint effects. So that will basically sprout out hair that looks like hair. Then you just want to work with NURBS curves. Then you'll just see NURBS curves come out. They'll stick straight out. And then you can have a combination of both. That's what we're going to use, a paint effects and NURBS curves. Now, why would you use paint effects only or NURBS curves only? Is because they may be a little faster. You put both of them together, it's going to slow down a little bit. So if you see yourself, now you can always change these anytime you want as far as the output goes, anytime you want. So if you have a machine that's a little hard, it's hard to simulate with, you might want to try it. But let's go ahead and try altogether the paint effects and NURBS curves. Okay, so another thing to think about, if you turn off collide with mesh, okay, we're not going to go over the create result or the create rest curves right now because that's an advanced topic and I'll save that for later. But the collide with mesh is self-explanatory, meaning that the hair will collide with this object. Now, the reason why you would turn that off, okay, then turning it on, is that it will slow down. So if you have a really slow computer, you may want to get the desired result that you want first with the hair and then have it collide with the surface. And that's really up to you what you want to do, but I'm going to turn it on. You're eventually going to have to collide with the surface, so let's go ahead and turn it on. And what's the difference between the grid and at selected surface points and faces? Okay, now the grid will give you your ability to randomize, which is really nice. Okay, and so we've got all these attributes here that we can mess with. Okay, now if I turn that on here, everything grays out except for the hairs per clump. Okay, alright, so basically at selected surface points, it's going to give you a it's going to look road It's going to have rows all along. And basically what it'll do is give you a hair per face, okay, that you see here. All right? And you can try both if you want to, but I'm just going to click on grid. And now what does grid do? Well, grid follows your UV map. Okay? What's nice about this is that it will, let me go ahead and reset this. Okay. It will give you at randomization the ability to randomize, which is really nice because you don't want hair that is in perfect rows. That's unnatural looking. But they give you both of these choices. Okay, so I'm going to click on grid because we get a more natural look. UV count. So you basically get this has to follow. This basically has to follow the UV count of the grid. So we're going to start off with a little higher than 8 because this won't give us very much at all. Okay, so we're going to start with the grid, and we're going to do a randomization of 1. Okay, let's go ahead and select that. And we're going to go ahead and set the rest of it up. Let's do count to something like 25 because we're not going to have enough if we don't do that. So we'll do 25. Passive fill is going to be something that is like create rest curves. This is more of an advanced topic. I'll kind of take you through that later. Randomization, like we talked about, it randomizes instead of giving us rows, perfect rows. This will randomize things up. Hair clumps has to do with when you create this, how many follicles you're going to get per clump. So we're going to keep it at 10 right now because if I go higher, it's going to slow you way down. And I'm going to show you how to spread those hair follicles out in later videos. Edge bounded, basically edge bound. This will ensure that the hair will be created within the UV shell. So we talked about the UV shell, so that's really nice. You can have a UV shell by itself and it will only create the hair within that UV shell. Now Equalize, this will ensure that the hair will not be generated in one area of the UV shell. So even though the first one, edge bound, you could have hair just generate in one area, and that's why you need to have Equalize on as well, because that'll spread the hair follicles out across the whole entire mesh properly. Alright, so dynamic versus static. Okay, dynamic means that the hair will react to gravity and other forces, dynamic forces, and static just basically means it will not. So we want to have that on. Points per hair, we'll leave it the same. The length basically is the length in units. So I have, if you look at the units here, I have inches, and that's really important that you're in the same units that I'm in. So I have mine in inches, so go into your preferences and change it from centimeters to inches. So if you're not where I'm at here, then make sure you do that. That way you can follow along really closely. Alright. Do you want it to be a new hair system? Yeah, absolutely. So that's what we have so far. So that's what we have to create. Let's go ahead and create hairs. Okay. Alright, that looks great. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is make sure that we do a simulation so everything's looking good. So what we're going to do here then is just kind of zoom out a little bit more and go into our preferences just to make sure everything's set up. So we're in inches, and then at the bottom, and then the time slider, we are set up at play every frame, 24 frames a second. Go ahead and save that, and let's go ahead and play. Okay, great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. I'm going to set this to 500, so 500 frames. Again, we can go in here and play the simulation. There we go. Okay, that looks pretty good. Alright, so let's go ahead and understanding the node structure is important. So let's go ahead and go into Windows and go into Outliner. If you don't see your Outliner, I've got mine up already, or I had it up. Here we go. So let's go ahead and take you through that. Right, the very first one is the hair system. This will be everything that incorporates what makes the hair itself. The shape of it, the look of it. So you can see that we've got all this, the clump and the hair shape, clump width scale, hair width scale. We've got clump curl. We're not going to get into all of these. These are very lengthy, and we're going to get into it later. Not all of them, but we'll hit most of them. And a lot of the stuff you've seen before, the dynamic properties, the stretch resistance, compression resistance, bend resistance, twist. So you see we've got actually more than the end cloth. So this is actually a lot more robust than the end cloth attributes that we had for the end cloth. Okay. Alright, so next thing we're going to do is look at the hair follicles. Okay, so we got the hair system and the hair follicle, right? And we're missing one for some reason here. It's my curl. My curves are gone. I don't know if I deleted them accidentally. I probably did, but let's go back, see if I can get that back in there. So I did want that in there. Okay. So let me go back and do this really quick again. And here, create here. We want the, there we go. There we go. Okay. So with this one, we've got the hair system, which I just talked about, the follicles. We're not going to mess with those. These are each and every follicle, and you can go in here and make these changes to each and every one of these, which would be just horrible if you wanted to by hand. Go for it if you want to. And the hair output curves, those are what is driving the PFX hair, which is the paint effects. So the curves are driving, so the nucleus is driving the hair system, the curves, and the curves are driving the PFX hair, which is the paint effects hair. So that's what you can see. Alright, nucleus is driving the whole thing, and then of course this. Now notice that I didn't put self-collide or colliding, so it's going inside of itself. So how do I change that? So if that happens to you and you forget to actually select that, so if I select this object and go in here to, and here, go into the option box, that I forgot to do collide with mesh. But what if you do that? What can you do to make the hair collide? So what you can do is select the object and go to end cloth and then click create passive collider, and it will actually work. Don't ask me why that nHair does not have its own passive collider system, but you will use the end cloth. So let's go ahead and play the simulation, and it's colliding, so that's great. So that works out real fine. Alright, so the end rigid is what I just created, was the ball as the passive collider. So that, and the nucleus controls the gravity, the wind and air density, and the speed. And that is the paint effects. Those are the curves, those are the follicles, and that's the hair system. So if you want to change the gravity, you would go into nucleus. If you want to change how the hair slides around on the object, you're going to click on end rigid and change that. Paint effects hair is basically, we haven't got really into the paint effects. I don't really want to mess with that one too much. And then you know these curves and follicles, and the hair system is where you're probably going to spend most of your time in messing with that. So I wanted to take you through the attributes, and that's it for right now for this video. So I want you to save your results. Go ahead and file, save scene as, so you can go back to this as ball UV map start hair simulation 1. You can see that there. Okay, I will see you in the next video.